Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. I know there's a lot of competition, so we're pleased that you're here to hear a little bit about what's happening using AI in the world. My name is Vivian Schiller. I'm the Vice President and Executive Director of Aspen Digital. We're a program of the Aspen Institute that focuses on all things at the intersection of innovation, technology, information, all that good stuff. So if you're paying at all attention to what's going on in AI, you have probably noticed, because there's a lot written, there's many articles and videos and TikToks and podcasts and what have you. And what you may have noticed is the conversation almost always falls into one of two camps. The first is, this is the most amazing thing ever. It's going to change the world. It's going to cure every possible thing that's wrong in the world. We're going to be able to live on Mars. A lot of this is coming from the tech companies. Just saying. But there's that whole conversation. And then all the way on the other side, there's a lot of conversation, worthy conversation, by the way. I'm not quite making, I don't mean to be making fun of it like I was just with this side. But there's also a lot of conversation that is about really quite serious issues about governance and privacy and safety. And some of that goes into an extreme of, we're all going to die, this is the worst thing that has ever happened. And there's even a name, there's the Zoomers and the Doomers. And so we thought it might be good for us to spend a little bit of time talking about not ignoring the problems, not overhyping AI, but to talk about how AI is showing up right now in our lives and what the possibility is across all kinds of fields of the way AI is being activated, and in many, many exciting ways. And I will say, just for a little plug, we at Aspen Digital hosted a summit a few weeks back in Washington called Shared Futures, which featured artists and musicians and poets, and we had the Vatican's AI guy with a rabbi and a Muslim scholar, and we had talked about AI and death, and we talked about all kinds of things, and it was really thrilling. And so you're going to get a little bit of a taste of that today here in this session, because there are three people who I'm going to introduce one at a time and let them speak to you, who are doing really exciting things at the cutting edge of AI. And so let's get right into it. Each of them is going to give a presentation, and at the end, the four of us are going to chat. So first up is my friend, the wonderful Mike Haley, who is Senior Vice President of Research at Autodesk. They address challenges like climate change, automation. Mike oversees Autodesk Technology Center and all of the AI efforts. So over to you.
Thank you, Vivian. Hi, everyone.
Woo!
All right. So I'm going to talk about creativity. Ever since the dawn of time, humans have been creative, right? And I mean, you could actually say that to be creative is to be human. It's such an elementary sort of part of us, right? And we don't want to lose that. Now, who was one of the most amazing creative people we can think of? It's Leonardo da Vinci, prolific polymath, inventor, artist. I mean, his ideas persist to this day in the world. Incredible person. But here's the thing. In Leonardo's time, people spent enormous amounts of time creating things, achieving levels of beauty that you rarely see in the world today. They created cathedrals over hundreds of years. It wasn't unusual to spend decades creating a fresco, right? There was time to do this. My provocation for you today is that there was an abundance of time. That's the one thing they had back there. They could really spend time on these kinds of things. We're going to build on this in a moment. Now, the thing is, with Leonardo, he didn't have to worry about end of sales quarters or investors or anything. He could really spend his time on these things. So what's happened since? What's happened in the world is things have sped up. Right? There's all these things that we have to do. We have to achieve a certain target. We have to create a certain number of buildings in a certain amount of time. So all these ideas like beauty and things that work for people kind of get shoved into this bucket of like optional, costly kind of things. And yet, at the same time, we have a ton more challenges, right? We're dealing with climate change. We're dealing with mass urbanization. We're dealing with new forms of energy. So it's become really difficult to find that kind of abundance of time, right, that existed in sort of Leonardo's era. Now, I'm going to posit, and this is the core of my provocation, that we're going to go back to having an abundance. And this abundance is going to bring about the ability for us to create beautiful experiences for people that are going to capture them. They're going to allow designers to create objects that you just want to hold in your hand because they embody the love the designer put into them. Or they're going to help us create spaces that bring people together and help humans thrive. Now, why is this? I believe this is going to be because there's going to be an abundance of creativity. We're not going to bring the time back because we're trying to do everything faster in the world these days. But what is going to happen with these AI tools that I'm about to show you, we're suddenly going to be able to spend more of our time on the actual creative pursuit, because that's really what it's about. It's how much do you get to spend doing these creative things. And of course, I'm going to use one of Leonardo's most iconic images, Vitruvian Man. I will tell you that AI is very good at removing the naughty bits from pictures, too, as you all notice here. So, that's a tip for all of you, if you ever need to do that on your slides. But I'm going to use this as the backdrop. Now, one of the things, actually, let me go back there. One of the things I'm fortunate enough to get to see in the research lab that I lead is we work with customers across all of these industries, and we co-develop AI technologies with them. So I get to see the potential of, like Vivian was saying, if we do these tools right, what can they do for the world? There is a path forward, I believe, with AI that we can really do amazing things. That's not hype, it's not doom, it's this course that we can go down the middle. And so I want to leave you today with some concrete examples of that. I want you to go away and go, I think I can see a path. So we're going to start with the humble keyboard and mouse. So here's the thing. The average architect goes to architecture school, and the very first thing you do in your first year is you learn to sketch. You sketch, you do it for a couple of years, you leave school, and guess what? You don't sketch anymore. You use a computer. You use software like what we built. And that's actually kind of sad. Okay, we've gotten used to this. Now, there's a great book called Thinking from the Right Side of the Brain. There's a study years ago. They did fMRIs of people doing sketching and people working on a computer. And it turns out, no surprise, when you're working on a computer, there's a little part of your brain that lights up. When you're sketching, pew, your whole brain lights up. So we are kinesthetic learners. We are meant to hold things and touch things and feel things. Again, kind of like what Leonardo was doing in his time, right, in those beautifully sketched notebooks. So what we've gotten used to is we've gotten used to dumbing ourselves down to the level of the computer, because this is the state-of-the-art technology we've been working with for the last 1,800 years nearly on computers, right? So what I'm going to suggest now is with AI, we are going to take the human senses back into things. We don't have to dumb ourselves down to a keyboard and a mouse. We can express ourselves however we want. We can draw something. We can talk to the computer. We can show it the images that inspire us. We can do all of these kinds of things and have it meet us just like we would talk to another human being. What this does is this unleashes creativity, because now we can use our full faculties when we're doing it. So the first example I'm going to show here that illustrates this point is something called Project Benini. So this is an AI model that directly generates 3D shapes from sketching. And you're going to see me here. I'm a professional car designer, as you'll see in a moment. I draw amazing cars. Here we go. There's my car. This is me with my Apple Pencil on my iPad. Literally, you can time this, probably about 5 seconds. Took me to draw that. The AI picks up my image and immediately gives me a car shape. Now, what you'll notice is it's understood that this is actually hollow inside, which is a car body would be hollow inside. It hasn't just mirrored the thing that I've created. It's understood. Here's another one where it's actually created the wheel wells. You notice it's added mirrors. It's understanding an intent. It's not just very simply taking the sketch. Now, I can tell you in most car design software in the world, to just get to even this stage of planning out a car takes days of sculpting and modeling and doing all sorts of things. So suddenly, just to be able to bring out a little pencil and to start sketching something to get shapes, the model I'm showing you right now is 1.5 years old. There's much more sophisticated ones that are coming that allow you to shade on it and do all sorts of other things, to use language at the same time that you're drawing. So it's listening to what you're saying, it's looking at your drawings, and it's creating concurrently with you. Now, here's something that I also want to show you. This is a learning that we had from, like I said, working with customers, being in front of customers and seeing kind of how this stuff is actually used. animations. We work with big animation studios. You guys have all seen these kind of videos, somebody doing the keyframes of a video, do all the different keyframes, and then you get good old Steamboat Willie in the middle. And this, we know this took months, right, of drawing all of the cells. It turns out this is a professional animator using our Maya, high-end Maya software, trying to animate a character based on a captured set of video sequences. And this is sped up that you're seeing, but this is about, I think it's about 3.5 hours of work of somebody basically trying to position a character. And after 3.5 hours, you get that. It's okay. Well, 3.5 hours, it's not super impressive for 3.5 hours work, but this does give you a sense of how difficult and tedious animation really is. And I mean, with high-quality movie animation, they are spending time on every single cell, every single keyframe. There's a precision that's required here. So what we did is we wanted to build an AI that would help animators, but not take away their agency. We were talking about agency earlier, not take away their agency. They came to us and said, we want to direct the action, and we want control. Don't take away control from us. That was the main thing. So here's an animation sequence developed with our software. This is in Maya, a character running, and they're going to use our AI model to animate the dog in this. And we captured hundreds of thousands of hours of dogs. This is our dog friend. He's part of our lab. They get tired at some point from capturing motion capture data, but we took thousands and thousands of hours of this. Also, we captured people. And now the AI, you can simply tell the AI where you want somebody to run. You want them to jump. You want them to climb up on something. And it'll generate all the keyframes. It'll move all the keyframes for you. So here you see they're positioning where the dog's going to be, what behavior he needs to have at every point. And he's just going to do that. Now, you can still come in on the animation sequence and edit him at any point. So you'll see, this is the final sequence that we just did, the dog chasing the woman. And you'll see his turns. And you'll see his little face turns, and he gets this growly, snarly look on his face right there. That was the animator coming in and saying, no, at this point, I want to take control. Like, you've gotten me the dog here, but now I want to move his head this way. And he can still take control. Now, the AI is still helping him, because he might change one keyframe, and the AI will smooth out the other keyframes to give it a smooth motion of the dog's head. So the animators love this, because they're like, my goodness, all those interstitial frames that I'm always working on that I don't want to actually spend time on, let the AI do it, but you're not taking away my agency. So again, this new way of interacting with the computer doesn't mean your agency goes away. It actually makes you stay in the flow state of creativity a lot longer than you normally would. Okay. So now, we've talked about human interaction. The other thing here is actually dealing with the complexities of design. So solving design problems involves looking at sometimes thousands of variables, and most problems in the world are systems problems. So these are interconnected variables. This is hard. Human brains are not good at this. We can hold 7 numbers in our head at once, right? That's our limit. For a computer to look at 1 million variables is totally feasible. So how do we start combining this kind of capability with the AIs that we've just talked about? So now we're going to look at a human thought partner. What if we could augment designers with this sort of power thinker? Again, not with the objective of taking over the design problem, but showing you the potential and allowing you to explore really complex spaces that you otherwise wouldn't be able to explore by yourself. To illustrate this, I'm going to show you, this is a site in West Oakland. It's on the side of the 580 highway. It was designated for affordable housing. Not a greatly desirable spot. It was an old factory. It needed to be cleaned up. But here's the thing. They wanted this to be affordable housing. They wanted it to be a carbon neutral or carbon negative site. They wanted to do it in under the amount of time that you would normally build this kind of thing, and under budget. So not too many constraints. Right? Not too many constraints. So we decided to work with them. Sometimes we do insane things like this. We decided to get together with a couple of our customers and build this sort of consortium and work with them to figure out a plan. So what we did is we first built an AI that could look at that piece of land and imagine every possible configuration of building that you want to put there. You're looking at green spaces, orientations of building. You're thinking about sound from the highway. You're thinking about solar gain on the solar panels we want to put on the roof. You're looking at just the flow of people, all of these things. So that's just sort of a higher level. Then the AI goes a little deeper. So actually, I'll show you in a moment. So what we do, as we go deeper in the AI, what we wanted to do is look at different ways of making this building faster, right, and less expensive. And really the only route to do that is through prefabricated modules. So one of our partners, FactoryOS, some of you may know them, they're based on Mare Island in the north of the San Francisco Bay, they do all sorts of buildings. They do commercial buildings right now, but they mostly sort of focus at homes. This is their factory, and we've been working with them for a while. So we'd already sensorized all the work that they did. We understood the modules, so we had a lot of data that we could start training the AI on. So what we did is we trained these AIs to think at every level. So the AI can think at site level, it can think at building level, it can think at module level, and it can think at the component level of what goes in. And then it can look at variables across all of those. Remember what I was saying about how many variables? A typical designer can't think across all of those variables and optimize them all at the same time. That's easy stuff for an AI to do if it was trained on the right data, right? So this is what we did. Now, you'll see here an example of the AI actually running and optimizing one building. And as it's going, it's calculating the embodied carbon of the building, it's calculating the cost of the building, and it's looking at the different colors of the different types of units, like a kitchen unit or a stairwell unit or a living unit or a bedroom unit, that kind of thing. So it's the result of this is we were able to find optimal configurations of all of these units to bring down the cost terrifically, and again, like I said, bring down the carbon. Now, here was the thing. In the process of doing this, because we were trying to bring down carbon, we were very proud when we got this. We were like, yeah, we got this. And then we started doing the full material analysis of what was going to be required to finish out the buildings. And we realized we forgot one thing. We forgot the facades of the building. There has to be a facade that goes on the outside. And guess what facades are traditionally made of? Concrete and steel. There goes your carbon. Through the roof. So we started using the AI to start doing some options analysis for materials. And one of the things that came up was the idea of baking carbon into the building. Let's capture carbon inside this building. So we took agricultural waste. It's mostly cut-offs from corn and hemp and these kinds of things. And we worked with a partner to do this. And we took all that material and we pack it into these molds. And into the mold, we introduced mycelium, mushrooms. The mycelium binds these organic fibers together, and then what happens is this entire thing is fired. So it kills the mycelium, but by then you've got this sort of bound brick, and it's compressed into a mold. So these molds, you can actually see them going into a kiln here. These are actually AA fire rated as well. They don't burn because they compressed so well, but they're incredibly light. They embody all of the carbon that you've put inside them. They're safe. One of the hardest things, by the way, to deal with facades is big concrete panels that are very dangerous. These things are light, so they're actually not dangerous anymore as well, and they're beautifully sound insulating. Remember, this thing's right next to the highway. So all of this came together. These smaller panels then get placed into larger panels that have got carbon fiber on the outside to make them weatherproof. There you can see the panel coming in here in the factory and then mounted on the buildings, and this is what the new facility is going to look like. Okay, so this is the idea. It's like, these are the kinds of things we can do in the future. Imagine being able to do this with every building we create in the world. That's the kind of future that I want with the AI. All right, so we've talked about, complexities of the world. One of the most complex things in the world, it's evaded computing for decades, is all of us, human beings. Human behaviors. How do we respond in spaces? What's our psyche? How's our physical nature work? How's our organic bodies work in spaces? These are things that are difficult to model. They're hard for computers to understand. So my final part of my provocation is part of the future is we can have AIs that actually are going to understand how we feel. We all feel something, just sitting in this room right now. Part of that's probably what you've done during the day. Maybe you have a talk coming up next, but it's also the light that's coming through the windows. It's the scent of the materials around you. It's the heat in the room. It's the airflow. It's all sorts of things that are making you feel something in these rooms, right? What if we could take that and embody that into an algorithm? Because I can tell you what, and you probably see it, there's a lot of bad architecture in the world. There's a lot of bad product design. And a lot of that comes about because you don't have the time to do it right. So what if the software could guide you? Again, you should have agency. You should be able to create what you need. But what if right from the get-go, saying, hey, that design decision you made, do you realize how people are going to feel in that space? Here's what's going to happen. So we worked with, this is the city of Toronto. So under the Gartner Expressway is an area called the Bentway, which over the last 5 years has been renovated and turned into a public park. We worked with the Bentway organization to build this apparatus. So it's a helmet with an outward-facing camera and an inward-facing camera of your face. You also wear a heart rate monitor and a galvanic response sensor. And we recorded people's responses as they walked through the spaces. So as members of the public came through, by the way, this is also a great research project in privacy too. So we're like, how we actually be able to remove anybody's identity, but capture the elements that we really needed to know. Surprise, concern, uncertainty, all of these sort of feelings. This allowed us to start building up larger and larger data sets that represent how humans, their actual well-being, how they're responding to these spaces. With this, we were able to create an AI. Our first one was called experiential views. And this baked it down to 3 factors. There's a lot more than 3. We're starting with 3. We're looking at, is a space tranquil? Is a space explorative? Or is a space social? You know, does it make me want to hang out with people in a space? Or do I want to wander around and find things? And we were able to find very strong correlations between materials, light, shapes, geometry, pathways, all sorts of things that would actually, even bits of furniture, that would immediately trigger these kind of responses in people. So my hope here is that we're going to be able to build this into all design software in the world so that you almost cannot design bad things in the world that don't cater for human beings. It's just baked in there from the beginning. So, the last part of my provocation is, this is the future of the abundance of creativity. This is what we have. And I think Leonardo da Vinci was an incredible thinker. If he was alive today, he'd be sitting here using every single one of the AI tools because he would see the potential of solving ever greater problems in the world and just getting back to creating beauty that can also be functional at the same time. Thank you very much.
That was amazing. Oh, thank you. You're absolutely right about Leonardo da Vinci. I have no doubt whatsoever. That was fantastic. Okay, up next, Beth Goldberg is the head of research and development at Jigsaw, which is an incubator at Google. And what Jigsaw does, it's a pretty remarkable organization. If you don't know it, they use technology, mostly AI these days, I guess, to solve big global problems, whether it's conspiracy theories or online harassment or issues around what we're going to talk about today. Okay, here you go.
Another round of another round of applause for Mike. That was incredible.
Yeah.
We're going to tell another story now about AI augmenting what humans can do, but I don't have any videos quite as cool as that. I want to go see one of those homes now. That was spectacular. What I'm going to do with you for the next 15 minutes is go on a trip together. We're going to immerse in Bowling Green, Kentucky. This would best be done if I could have brought enough bourbon for all of you, but I couldn't fit that in my luggage. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some videos and some storytelling and some ethnographic research to take you with me to where I spent quite a bit of time the last year in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And the reason we were there was we wanted to use AI to do something it had never done before, which is have the largest online civic dialogue, basically an online town hall that America had ever had. So let me tell you the story about that. But first, I'm going to start with a question. Can I get a show of hands? How many of you are in a group chat that is just blowing up and you have totally lost the thread of conversation? It is just popping off. People are responding right now. You don't know what's happening. Okay, when you're in that state of overwhelm, you know what happens to all of us? We start lurking. We aren't informed enough to actually participate in the conversation. You're like, last time I checked, we were talking about the farmer's market. Now we're talking about Doge. How do we get from vegetables to Musk? I don't understand. And so we step out of the conversation and we become lurkers. And that has a lot of implications for democracy. And so it looks like I don't have the notes up here. If you're able to help me out with that, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. Can we go? Yeah, great. Okay, so it turns out making sense of these large-scale conversations, whether they're on our phones in a group chat or part of democratic dialogues, is actually really hard. When lots of people want to talk at the same time, it becomes really hard to listen. And we've done a really good job as technologists at places like Google and Autodesk and elsewhere at building tools for people to talk at scale, right? We've got chat apps, we've got social media, we've got email. But what we have neglected is building tools to listen to each other at scale. And that's actually a major problem for those of us who care about our flailing democracies right now, because it turns out that conversation is actually the soul of democracy. We need to be able to have a free and open exchange of ideas and actually understand what our neighbors are trying to say in order to heal what's happening to our nation right now. And so we need to be able to make sense of all of these different voices in sort of a pluralistic conversation in order for us to feel heard and want to stop lurking and speak up. So how do we do that? Well, we've been thinking about that challenge at Jigsaw. We're a small unit where I work inside of Google for a number of years now. And we've actually built this technology using AI quite a few years ago, so sort of like AI 1.0, where we said, how can we help make conversations online less toxic? Can we identify what people themselves feel is toxic speech? And then help folks like the New York Times, Reddit, Le Monde, and others identify billions of comments a day that are either healthy parts of speech or toxic parts of speech, and then do some upranking and downranking. And not to be too much of a tech utopian here, but this is really old school. LLMs have actually unlocked a completely new set of tools for us to make conversations not just a little bit less toxic, not just do some upranking and downranking, but actually completely understand and make sense of large-scale conversations. These LLMs have transformed our ability to not just hear one another, but we can summarize, we can categorize, we can identify areas of common ground, and then we can data visualize that in a way where we don't have to keep getting lost in our conversations anymore. And so what this means for democracy is that people can start to actually stop feeling so much political apathy, political polarization. We can stop feeling like we're on the sidelines of discourse and actually be part of more democratic conversations. So we wanted to put all that to the test, because that was very theoretical, what I just said. And so we went to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and there were some conversations that policymakers wanted to have with their constituents. And these are really brave policymakers. So shout out to the incredible town of Bowling Green and their policymakers there, because they are experiencing something that's actually a microcosm of changing demographics and urbanization trends all across America. Bowling Green is actually doubling in size right now. And that's a really good thing in terms of job growth, in terms of economic development. But there's a pretty mixed bag of emotions about it. You've got farmers who are concerned about land use. You've got teachers who are concerned about class sizes. And you've got these lifelong residents who are really concerned about their small town identity. And this is a town where, just to paint you a picture of Bowling Green, they are home to a lot of car manufacturers. In fact, the most classic American car, the Corvette, they're all made in Bowling Green, Kentucky. But now, those Corvette factories are sitting right next to mosques, new universities, some really good Vietnamese restaurants. I have to say I was really impressed with the Vietnamese food in Bowling Green, Kentucky. If you guys ever go, the refugee community is doing amazing things for the food scene there. But you can see these tensions, right? These are sort of a microcosm of the polarization tensions that we're seeing across America right now playing out in Bowling Green. And so these are all really valid concerns and tensions, and it turns out the local government there, led by this guy named Doug Gorman, are taking these tensions really seriously. Doug is actually the judge executive, which is a really fancy Kentucky term for mayor. And when we got to meet with Doug a few months ago, he said something really profound when he was talking to us about this tension. He said, do we want this growth, this doubling in size, to happen to us, or do we want it to happen for us? And he recognized that if it was going to happen for us, we needed to have a large, pluralistic, inclusive conversation where all the folks in Bowling Green were part of shaping their collective future. Now that sounds really lovely, but how do you actually do that in practice? Doug is working, as most governments are, with super constrained resources, as you were talking about, Mike. And so to address these tensions that he saw between the old and the new, he needed to have some sort of super cheap, efficient, and affordable way to bring all of these voices together in conversation. There are actually a lot of mechanisms right now that exist to do that. We've got town halls, we've got polling, we've got city council meetings, we've got referenda and voting. As you all know, trust is broken right now in all of these mechanisms. They're also super resource intensive for governments to run. They're infrequent, and they're sort of just snapshots in time of what that particular group of people who came out on that day to vote think. So when we asked Doug, how are these working for you right now? How many people are coming to the town halls in Bowling Green, Kentucky? Do you know what he said to us? First he laughed, and then he said 8. There are 8 people who attended the last town hall in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And do you know who those 8 people are? It's not a random sample of residents of Bowling Green. It's the people with really strong opinions, right? It's the detractors. And so Doug was eager for alternatives to these 8 people at a town hall. He wanted to listen to the whole community. And he wanted to be able to do it without being co-opted, and he wanted to do it in a way that was inclusive. Well, theoretically, as we told Doug, that's exactly what AI should be able to do. We should be able to have this really large-scale conversation with thousands and thousands of people, millions and millions of opinions and ideas, and actually be able to make sense of that in a way that's both moderated to keep some of those detractors from derailing things, and actually get us to a constructive policy conversation. But this has never been done before. This is all very theoretical. We showed him this pretty graph. He was like, great, let's sign up, let's do it. And so when we got the consent of a larger group of public leaders, I took my team of Google researchers and designers and engineers. We were wearing all black. We descended on Bowling Green, Kentucky, and said, hey, we are going to solve all your problems with AI. That's not actually what happened. We were wearing all black. It was actually pretty funny. But no, instead of starting with the question, how can AI solve for this, we started much earlier. We said, why aren't people showing up to civic conversations today? Is it the same reason that we're lurking in our chats? And so we wanted to answer this question, and to do that, we did a bunch of ethnographic research. We wanted to understand the barriers to democratic participation in their own eyes. And so we focused on the hardest to reach populations, the folks that weren't part of that 8 at the town halls. We went to the refugee centers, we went to the halfway house, we went to the rehab facilities with folks who were recovering from opioid addictions. We went to the elder care facilities. And you know, the reasons that they told us they don't participate resonated with me so much as a member of those group chats. I was like, wow, I'm not informed enough on this really complex topic. Or we heard, I don't know what my role is. Am I even allowed to be in that room, in that dialogue? Or we heard, I don't think that they even care about my voice. My voice doesn't matter here. Consider this one example. So my fellow researcher and I were in Bowling Green this November, and we actually spent election day with 2 Afghan sisters. They had managed to escape Kabul just in the nick of time, and the State Department had resettled them in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And over chai on their couch, they really struggled to even grasp the first question we asked in our interview for them, which was about civic participation. And they looked at us sort of befuddled, and they were like, am I even allowed to go to one of these, let alone speak at one of these civic fora? What does that even mean? What does that look like? And we realized that in order for us to have one of these online dialogues with these Afghan sisters participating, we would need to completely redesign what they looked like and how we called in participants. They would need to be able to participate totally anonymously. They would need to be able to participate from the safety of their own bedroom. And then they would need to be called in by someone they trusted. And in this case, these sisters were already participating in public life. They were just doing it at the local Afghan mosque. And so could we get the women's group leader at the mosque to actually call them into the dialogue? Yeah, okay, maybe that would work. In another example, we took a young college student. He was this really sort of like boisterous, vocal student, but he had never participated in Bowling Green public life. He was just like, I can't go to that. I'm not a lawyer. And we're like, you don't have to be a lawyer. You can actually come to some of these civic conversations. And so we brought him to one on a city zoning conversation. And he's sort of sitting in the back nervously. And as they start talking about zoning for one of his favorite local bars, he starts to get really animated, and he gets really engaged, and he realizes, wait, I have opinions on this. And before you know it, he's up there making public comments in front of a room full of not lawyers. And so what we learned from this ethnographic research was that in order for people to participate in these civic dialogues, they need to be told and understand that their personal lived experience is expertise. And so with these ethnographic insights, we went back to the leaders of Bowling Green, and we started to co-design a process, a product, and a marketing campaign with them. And we called it, What Could Bowling Green Be? Can you all read that? It says, what could Bowling Green be? You see it right there at the top? Okay. And so for this messaging campaign, we teamed up with these local leaders from all the different community groups, and we actually translated this campaign into 9 different languages. These are just a few of the most widely spoken languages today in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which really surprised me as well. It's kind of amazing. And we put these flyers in every possible place in Bowling Green. We put them at the local coffee shops, in the mosques, and the megachurches. We had them at the basketball games. And we really wanted to call people in to this conversation and meet them right where they were. And so part of how we did that was with a local social media campaign driven by and for the people of Bowling Green.
This February, you can let your voice be heard.
What do you think BG could be?
More child-friendly activities, more museums,
bringing in more tech-focused businesses and programs.
It's to continue to build on infrastructure.
Multi-sports facilities,
talking 10 field turfs like the Paradise Sports Complex in Naples.
BG, I think, could be the biggest city in Kentucky one day.
And still have that small town, hometown vibe and feel.
The town's blowing up, we're trying to do it responsibly.
Come on, join in and let us know what you think.
What do you think BG could be?
When it's all grown up.
Cool. So when the citizens of Bowling Green saw this campaign on their social media, they could click a link, or when they saw it on their coffee shop or at the basketball game, and they could go to this open conversation that just had a simple, open-ended question for them. What do you want for the future of Bowling Green? And then once they answered that in a comment form, they could respond to other people's comments, and they could upvote and downvote them. It looks kind of like Reddit. It was a super simple interface. And we left this open for a month, and we left it totally anonymous. And so folks could come back and rejoin the conversation at various points, maybe pick this up from their bedroom later or from halftime at the basketball game. We used things like Perspective API, that sort of early AI I was telling you about, to moderate the conversation. To be honest, it was actually a really PG conversation. We didn't use it very much. And we geofenced the conversation to keep it just to folks in Bowling Green. But other than that, this was a completely open, accessible conversation. I'll show you what it looked like in practice. So once people input their comments, then comes the really cool AI part. We built this tool that we creatively named SenseMaker to make sense of all of these comments. What it did was it started to categorize them, and then it started to summarize them and show little subtopics here, and it'll start to visualize each of these subtopics. And as you see here, you can drill in at various levels of granularity, and so you can see your own individual comments, how many people voted on it. And so if you're the mayor, if you're Doug, you can say, well, I just want to read the summary of each of these sections. But if you're the head of the infrastructure department, you really can go in and see, where is there low-hanging fruit for me? Where are there 80% or more agreement on different ideas for the future of infrastructure in Bowling Green? So it was really scary building this and thinking, wow, we've just done something really cool. What if no one joins the conversation? We had to remind ourselves the baseline here is 8 people. We just had to get more than 8 people. So we were like, maybe we'll get 100, maybe we'll get 1,000. This is what happened. 1 in 10 residents, thank you, 1 in 10 residents in Bowling Green, this is almost 8,000 folks, showed up and participated in this conversation. And they weren't just curious lurkers like we are. They actually put in over 4,000 different policy proposals and ideas for their town, and they voted and shared opinions on one another's ideas over 1 million times. Can you imagine how long this would take public servants to make sense of manually? But AI did this in about 3 minutes. It spit out the report. And so this was ultimately the largest online deliberation in US history, at least that we're aware of. If you know of a bigger one, please let me know after this talk. And this suggests something really important to us. This is that people actually do want to be part of shaping our political democratic futures. We do want to be part of the conversation. We just have to be invited in. And so what was the actual outcome of this beyond those sort of engagement statistics? I'll give you 2 statistics that I feel really excited about. The first is how this impacted the public. And for those of you out here in research or monitoring and evaluation, we did a whole bunch of randomized control trials as well as pre-post surveys with participants to understand, how did this affect things like polarization? How did it affect their sense of social cohesion in their community? And one of the findings that I was most excited by was we were looking at these different metrics as sort of bridging capital, sort of social cohesion metrics. And one of them was that 83% of the public in Bowling Green felt that after they participated, they could better understand the points of view with people they disagreed with. In other words, their willingness to understand the other had increased. And that is the foundational building block of depolarizing our democracies. What about the leaders? What did they think of this? Well, first, it highlighted something to the local leaders that they were really excited about, which is like, they're already doing a lot of stuff that people were asking for. People just weren't even aware of these public services that exist. So they just needed better marketing. Second, it surfaced a bunch of those low-hanging fruits that I talked about, right? Things that were low resource intensive, but that 80% plus of residents of Bowling Green actually really wanted. And third, the thing that we were most excited about is it surfaced all these areas of common ground, all these places where so many people across their polarized community came together, and it allowed these local leaders to feel like they could accurately represent this really diverse community because they understood where there was common ground in this community. What surprised me the most was that in today's state of politics, we had 96% agreement among a bunch of leaders. When's the last time you saw 96% agreement among a bunch of politicians? And so what I'm going to leave you with is some good news. The tools that we used here in Bowling Green are all free and open source. So I hope that that was just a pilot that can inspire this to happen in so many other cities, states, and communities across the world. What you'll find at this link is the tool that I mentioned, SenseMaker, available free on GitHub. We've also got a how-to guide and sort of an implementation guide with a lot of our recruitment materials. When leaders like all of you in this room actually combine AI tools like SenseMaker with some of these existing large-scale conversation platforms, places where we can talk at scale, we can actually start to build more cohesive democracies and bridge polarized divides. And I know that those are very buzzwords du jour right now, but I mean them sincerely. Bowling Green showed to me and to all of us that when we deploy AI tactfully and strategically and inclusively, we can actually help people to not only speak at scale, but to listen at scale. Thank you.
It's outstanding. That was outstanding, Beth. Thank you so much. Okay, our third and final presenter is Pat Patara-Nuttaporn, who's a researcher at MIT, where he co-directs the MIT Media Lab's Advancing Humans with AI research program. His work was also named Time's Best Inventions of 2023 and Fast Company's 2023 World-Changing Ideas list. And now he's going to share some things with us with a very interesting jacket.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really difficult following these two amazing speakers. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to talk about dinosaur, which is what I love. How many people like dinosaur? Okay, yeah, that's great. I think it's more interesting than AI, to be honest. I think dinosaur is what I love. That's why I always dress as dinosaur. But growing up, I love dinosaur, but a special kind of dinosaur, which is a cyborg dinosaur, right? When dinosaurs are empowered with technologies, this, I think, not only represents sort of, my childhood imagination, but also my research at MIT. Instead of making cyborg dinosaur, I work on cyborg human, or the idea of, designing the way that human and AI can sort of interact with one another. What I really appreciate from these two speakers is that they focus not just the technology, but also the human as well. Unlike many of the conversation may have heard where people say, we have better AI, it's going to solve everything. I think you need to put more emphasis on the people, right? And in my work, I ask, can we design AI that not only, getting smarter and better in itself, but actually leading to human flourishing? That's sort of the thesis of my research. And what I mean by human flourishing is that we can look at different areas where human can thrive, like helping people gain wisdom, helping people have greater wonder about the world, being inspired, like what said earlier, and also having well-being, right? So these 3W: wisdom, wonder, and well-being. I think these are very, very important. I was inspired by the work in psychology that look at the science of human flourishing, and also try to see how we can use that insight to design better AI system that are focusing on these three aspects. For example, the first area I want to talk about is how we can use AI to enhance human wisdom. You may have seen another study from my colleague actually at MIT on if you don't use AI critically, it can actually have negative impact on your cognitive capability, especially if students or children are using them to do homework instead of actually helping them do that. So I think the question is whether AI could support human intelligence or suppress human intelligence. These are design choices that can be made when we think about AI system. The question is, which kind of future we want, right? For me, I want to, design AI system that augment human cognitive capability. So in the first project I want to share with you, we look at how we can design AI as a second brain that can help people make more rational decisions when we need to do so. So in this case, we borrow the theory of nudge from the Nobel laureate, and think about how we can incorporate AI feedback in a wearable AI system that always with you, so that when you listen to statement, like political statement, advertisement, TikTok, or whatever, you have another sort of cognitive system that help you process something. What is really important here is that the AI doesn't tell you what is right or wrong, but provide meta information. Like you listen to a statement that have no evidence to suggest or to support that, or only have like anecdotal evidence that is not the strongest type of evidence. The AI would be able to flag that and explain to you why the statement that you listen to may have certain evidence or not. right? And what we find here on this graph in a randomized control trial is that when the AI can provide its explanation, why is the thing that you listen to contain evidence or doesn't have evidence, you become, or people in the study become much more rational. They actually agree more with statements that are well supported by evidence, and also be able to distinguish, poor argument from good argument better. Another way that we think about this is also looking back, at ancient history, right? The Greek philosopher Socrates has developed this method where he used to teach his students, which is never to answer the question, but always asking more question, right? So we ask, instead of having AI provide the answer to the question, what if we flip the paradigm around, having the AI ask intelligent question to help you think for yourself and arrive at the answer, right? So here we did an experiment where the AI help you understand complex statements. Some of them contain logical fallacy, like, if a gamer stab one another, every gamer is going to become more violent, right? This is an overgeneralization where you use one instance to overgeneralize to, bigger population. The AI could turn that into a question like, well, if one person become more violent, does it mean everyone will become violent as well, right? So, language model are really good at helping us reshape the statement into this kind of question. And what we found is that, surprisingly, when the AI asks us intelligent question like this, it actually helps people arrive at the answer or the correct answer better than the AI providing the correct answer 100%. In the real world, the AI doesn't always provide the correct answer. But here, if you use the AI as a cognitive stimulator, right, to help people, in the right mind, think about the certain thing, you can actually help them develop cognitive skill. And what we hope is that people will start to internalize this process so that in the future, they maybe no longer need to rely on the AI. They start to ask these critical questions themselves, right? That's what we are hoping to see in the next research. Next, we think about wonder. So not just wisdom or critical thinking, right? Sometimes we want to be inspired. We want to, feel excited to learn and see, what the wonder in the world, right? So I have long last name because I'm from Thailand. And another thing that Thailand is known for is a traditional dance, right? I grew up with this traditional dance, and I wonder, with the advancement of technology, can we design new technology that allow us to preserve this dance tradition in a way to sort of make people have this wonder about the tradition that is somewhat dying in the modern world, right? So this is actually a picture from Khon dance, which is a dance based on Ramayana epics. And you can see different character and different dance, but it's actually based on principles that are very complicated, and people sometimes don't fully appreciate or understand it. So I work with a choreographer in Thailand. His name is Pichet Granchun, who have been working and deconstructing and trying to understand what are the wisdom and knowledge in this choreography. You can see, similar to the Virtual Man, where he tried to dissect this traditional dance knowledge from 59 sort of dance repertoire into principle. And then, we only have 59 dance repertoire, right? We don't have big data for Thai traditional dance, so we cannot train an AI model for this. So instead, what we did was I listened to him, I tried to understand this principle, and I worked with the team to translate this into, an algorithm that can be applied to the 3D model of a human. So you can see we can kind of generate new choreography based on this sort of dance tradition. And what was really interesting is that when we have this work with the real choreographer or the real human dancer, they start to use the AI to push the boundary and see how they can use this principle that is based on the tradition to come up with new choreography, and then they can dance together in a way that never happened before. This is also, I think, a way of preserving the tradition, but also evolving it as well, so that the tradition doesn't die with the elder generation, but continue to exist. Especially, if kids can come up and generate their own choreography with the principle that is based on. And the work was well received. It was in Fast Company, and we just show it. We just had a European premiere 2 weeks ago, so that's why I still have a jet lag coming here. But this was a wonderful project. The last area I want to talk about is the area of AI and human well-being. I think the most important thing. You don't have a human well-being that you cannot have the other two, right? So you need to be sure to have good health. So with the advancement of language model, I start to think that one possibility is to go one step further. So not just using the language, but also use the whole human experience data to create what we call large human model. So you can see that's an older version of me that the model generate. I can see my prediction of what I might become, the kind of food I might have, and other things. And I think I look quite nice at the age 96 years old, right? So I think this is an example of large human model. We wonder what happens if we can allow people, especially younger people like kids, to be able to talk to their future self. This is actually one thing that I've been thinking about as a kid, learning about time machine. Like, I want to see where my life might end up with by taking this time machine to the future. At MIT we have a lot of advanced technology, but we don't have time machine. But we can simulate a time machine, right? We can build a system that allow a person to answer a few questions about who they are, what is their goal, what they want to be, and then be able to simulate a conversation or a chat with their future self. This is based on a psychology of future self continuity from my collaborator at UCLA, Professor Hal Hirschfield. His research have shown that if you increase future self continuity, allowing people to connect better with your future self, those people tend to have better mental health, long-term financial planning, and better decision-making. So what we did was we designed this sort of AI system that essentially allow people to chat with their future self. One thing that is important is that we told people before they experiment with this that the future is not written in stone. This is just one possibility. If you go back and change the answer to the question, or say a different thing to the AI, like, oh, instead I want to be a scientist, I want to be an artist, then you will see a different future. So this is a tool for self-reflection, not a prophecy. It's a possibility. And what we have shown is that when people use this tool, they become a long-term thinker. They have higher level of future self-continuity. And also we see decrease in anxiety as well. And I'm happy to share that this tool right now has been deployed in 190 countries around the world. And we have, we are looking at this large-scale data, and we see the same pattern that we've seen in the experiment that we have done. So I'm, very excited to see this tool helping people think in longer term, especially when the time that seems very depressing, and it seems like we can only see short distance. So we need to think long term. That's really, really important. We also need to think about planetary well-being as well, right? Not just individual well-being. So in that case, I wonder, can we design, other type of AI that, is not model based on human, but actually based on animal? So maybe we can talk to the animal, not just our future self as well, right? What if the beluga whale can tell us about the experience of having plastic in their food? Or what if, the seahorse can tell us, different experience of, being in the ocean with climate change? So we wonder, what happens if we can, use AI to allow this impossible conversation to happen. So what we did was we take scientific research or scientific report on how animals are being affected by climate change and turn them into conversational or interactive avatar that people can then interact with. And then we run an experiment, and we were surprised to show that when people talk to this animal, they actually care more about the environment, and then they actually have higher level of environmental intention and also higher level of pro-environmental behavior. Like they're doing more positive things for the environment as well. So I'm hopefully that this kind of work, a lot of people are talking about AI agent, these will become the agent for positive or social change in the future. The last project I want to mention on the topic of well-being is also, the thing that a lot of people are concerning about, which is, the dark side of AI, right? I'm optimistic and really excited about the possibility, but also critical about, if we decide incorrectly, or we use, in the field of human-computer interaction, we call dark pattern, or design system to be addictive or have negative impact on people. So in this experiment, we collaborate with OpenAI to understand, does having AI companion lead to better emotional well-being, or does it have the opposite effect? And in what context does it lead to good or bad outcomes? And what we find is very, very interesting. I think right now when people talk about AI, they talk about it as one giant umbrella, right? The one whole thing. But what we find is that AI can behave differently. Some AI encourage you to interact with your friend and hang out with people and go and enjoy the outside. But some AI were, quite toxic. They gaslight you, or they do something that are, not, healthy, and they're kind of antisocial, right? And what we found is that if we analyze AI based on these behavioral metrics, not just whether it's accurate or not, but based on these behavioral metrics, we can identify what pattern of AI usage that lead to better mental health or well-being, or which one lead to negative outcome. For example, here you can see sort of the two metrics that we have: the pro-social AI interaction and the anti-social, or the socially proprietary behavior. And you can see the different model behave, a different, we see they score a different metric differently, right? I think this is really, really important, because if we have more of these insight, it can lead to smarter regulation. So we don't ban AI or readily adopt AI, but really understand what type of AI or what factors are good for people, right? So I hope, looking at all of this, you can see that, the goal of AI should not just be, smarter in itself, but really leading to human flourishing, right? To help people cultivate wisdom, wonder, and well-being. And in order to do this, we need to look at the interaction between the two. Across all the projects, we design the interaction between people and AI with the goal of human flourishing. And I'm happy to share that, starting this September, I just finished my PhD, and MIT actually gave me an opportunity to become a professor at MIT, and thank you. And to continue this work on advancing human with AI. You see, humans come before AI, because we really believe that as technology advances, we need to make sure that we study and design systems that are really good for people and lead to human flourishing. And with that, my past self, my current self, my future self, want to thank you for listening to my talk. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thanks. I have to say, Pat, if you look that good at 96, you're definitely doing something. You will have done something very right. Okay, so we're going to. Do you care where I sit? Can I just sit anywhere? I have a couple of questions. I have a million questions for them, but I'm not going to answer all of them. I'll give this to you. But I do have a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to you. So, I mean, first of all, one of the things I love about all three of your presentations is that you ended with this, Pat, but it's about, you start with the human. And it is the opposite of many people's worst fears, which is, taking away human agency. But rather, in each of your cases, it was about using AI to augment what it means to be human, and to do things that would not, without AI, otherwise be possible. So that's very exciting. I also want to ask you, in each of your cases, however, what were the blockers? I mean, you all painted a really wonderful picture, and I'm excited about all of it. But I want to know what the blockers were that you encountered. The human blockers. I don't mean in your technology and coding. That's for another conference. But also, and what are you worried about? Is there anything in each of your cases you're worried about of what could go wrong? Yeah.
I'll start. Just a couple of things. So first off, you mentioned in the beginning, Vivian, the issue with the hype that sits around AI. Every one of the people that I work with in the industries that I talked about are receiving that hype. So they're unsure what to buy into and what not to buy into. And inherently, they fall into the state of distrust. And overcoming that distrust is actually one of the hardest things I've found. It's like when those a lot of the projects I shared with all of you, a large part of that work was actually taking them on a journey to say, hey, we could do this. And well, how would the AI work? Would it really do that? Could it work? Let me try it. Is it going to take away my agency? Is it going to do that? So really walking them through that. So the thing I worry about the most right now is we live in a world of distrust that is only getting worse by the behaviors of others and driven by various other drivers. And I think that's where conversations like this is so important, because there is a way to do this in the right way.
And do you think, just to follow up, do you think the fact that it uses AI is in itself a driver of distrust?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, the minute they hear it's using AI, so what are you really doing? What data are you training on? Are you capturing my data? Are you monetizing me? Are you stealing my uniqueness? What's your real monetary goal? I mean, which are 100% fair questions to ask, because that's exactly what's going on in the world today.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah, mistrust is exactly the theme that I was going to pick up on as a blocker. We basically took the two most mistrusted institutions that exist today, government and big tech, and we put them together. And we said, trust us. So that was really challenging. One of the facets of that I think was really interesting, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to build trust around, was moderating speech, right? We've had a decade now of debate about how to moderate social media, how to decide what's hate speech, what's good speech, et cetera. And so for this local town dialogue, what were we going to decide was bad speech? What were we going to decide to remove? Who should have that authority? And how would we build trust with the public that we were going to be inclusive of their conversations but still keep it from going off the rails, right? Keep those detractors. So I think that was a really interesting collaboration with the local government, and we ended up having like the guy from the local newspaper lead the moderation team, because he does this all the time with sort of the editorial section of the Bowling Green Daily News, which I'm sure all of you subscribe to. But it ended up having to be this really interactive process where we had so many folks from the community who already do moderation of conversations in Bowling Green be in charge of that, and we had no Google logos anywhere near it.
Well, I have two follow-ups on that. First of all, was there any attempt at moderating or saying, oh, we don't want to include that, or?
Yeah, so we used this tool, Perspective API. I mentioned it was sort of AI 1.0. This is models like Palm that came out in like 2015. And these were doing simple things like trying to identify toxicity levels. And if the local moderation team said, okay, anything scored at a 0.8 and above likelihood of toxicity, we're going to flag for human review. And so then you had these local Bowling Green residents that used this AI tool to sort of flag comments to review. Ultimately, I think like 3 comments were removed. And all of this is publicly available on the GitHub, so there was going to be transparency about both what tools we were using, what we removed, and what we kept.
I'm moving to Bowling Green, man. BG.
BG. Good.
But one other question. You mentioned no Google logos anywhere around it, but in fact, you are a representative of Google. And did that lead to any kind of, how did that play into distrust? I mean, you are big tech.
Yeah, we actually asked about this in our ethnographic interviews. We were really nervous about that. How should we brand this thing? How should we tell you that this is AI? Do you trust AI implicitly or not? And a lot of people actually have more trust in Google than I thought. They're not clearly the ones that are part of the debates in Washington right now. These folks said, oh, Google and AI, yeah, you're going to do really smart, useful things with my data. Do I totally trust you with my most private information? No, absolutely not. But you're asking me a question like, what's should the future of my town be? Yeah, I trust you with that answer.
Great. So Pat, same question.
I think for me it's thoughtfulness. I think that's something that's lacking in the world today. So I'm really happy to be on the panel with these two thoughtful people who think a lot about AI and not just saying things that provocative things just for the sake of being provocative. I think that is really dangerous right now to say like, oh, AI is coming out of your job or nothing gonna happen with AI. Like we see this really strong polarization in terms of how people think about AI today. And I feel like thoughtful conversation is what we need so that we can go beyond whether we ban or we adopt, but really asking better question of like how do we design AI. And another thing that I think is also a really important thing that we need to be better at is the metrics, right? Right now when people evaluate the AI model on like the new model being released every day, but the metrics that are being used are usually things like accuracy or things on performance, things that maybe are less about the human. My colleague Professor Sherry Toko once said that it's less about what technology can do, but what it is doing to us. So hopefully they will be able to develop like new type of metrics that get into like whether the model is pro-social or anti-social. Does it lead to enhanced creativity, or does it detract human creativity out of that?
That leads me to a follow-up. I'm glad you mentioned Sherry Turkle, who is a frequent speaker at Aspen Ideas. The last project that you showcased, the one you did with OpenAI about what the impact that AI is having on people. We've all seen a lot of reporting lately about people basically losing their minds, going too far deep into the rabbit hole. So my question is, did any of that play out? And then related to the question I asked Beth, OpenAI, one of like the biggest, if not the most, certainly the most famous of the AI labs. I mean, isn't there a little bit of self-interest in that for them, for the outcomes to be such that it's all going to be great?
Well, one thing that we did with them, which is, we have an agreement that whatever the result would be, we were going to release it. They can look at it first, but they cannot change the outcome. So, we are happy to actually report, the honest scientific outcome, even though we had this kind of large-scale collaboration, which I think is really important because that's where the people are. We'll be able to analyze like millions of conversations anonymously and be able to detect this nuanced pattern. Yeah. And we report that the longer people spend time with chatbot, the lonelier they would become and the less social interaction they might have. But what we also report is that there are also different type of interaction that could promote the opposite, that make people hang out more with other people, better mental health and well-being as well. So we show both sides depending on what is going to get implemented.
Shocker! There's no one single outcome for all of this.
No,
amazing. Who would have thought?
Right.
Okay, I really want to. I mean, I could keep asking questions myself, but we've got such interesting speakers here, presenters doing such interesting things. So I want to open it up early for questions. And the first hand I saw up is right over there. If you feel comfortable doing so, please say both your name and your affiliation because it gives us a little context.
Awesome. I'm Sarah Beatty. I recently left Meta, where I worked in the integrity team for a couple years.
Like
so
I said, context.
The moderation world was very much mine. I specifically focused on detection. My question to you is whether you think, especially maybe focused on Google and Autodesk, that private institutions should be taking responsibility for making sure that the use of their technology is done in a non-adversarial way? And if not, what are alternatives that you see to sort of enforce everyone ubiquitously making sure that their tools are not being used adversarially?
Wow. Do you want me to start?
Sure. Yeah, I love this question. Also, hello, nice to see you again. I think a lot of time and energy the last 5 years was spent thinking about how do we put in safeguards, sort of guardrails, speed bumps for people falling down all different types of rabbit holes and into different online harms. And so I think, yes, the onus for responsibility for that is on these private companies that are making it, but it can't just be on them because you're right, there are always going to be those edge use cases that no red team is able to think of. And for that, we need lots of other sort of parts of the multi-stakeholder forum here, figuring out what we do about those adversarial behaviors. So there is a role for government here. There is a role for AI literacy and citizens here. There's a role for civil society here to call out when some of those cases happen. But yeah, I think the bulk of the responsibility does lie with the folks designing the tech in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It is moving so fast right now that any legislature, for them to keep up is literally impossible. We were part of a conversation, Vivian and I, about a year ago, where we were talking about you have to go down the governance route. You can't go down the regulation route. The minute you're trying to write something down, by the time that ink is dry, it's already irrelevant and things have moved on. And then in order to do that, you have to, what we found is bringing together consortiums of companies is actually really important. So what you've got to do is not just look at one company. It's like in our space, there's a number of companies automating things in architecture or construction or manufacturing. Bringing them all together, we had a small consortium that came together just a few months ago. And for example, what came out in that was that they were all incredibly interested in building AI for health and safety on a construction site. No company wants to be known for, we don't kill people on our construction site, right? Everybody should be doing that, right? So they all saw that as a place to share practices, find the bounds of the AI, sharing all their information and everything in a very free way, really as a starting point for just opening up the doors completely and saying, let's all do this in a responsible way together. They're not going to do that in the get-go completely, but there's places to start these conversations and do it together with government. As well.
Another question. We have a gentleman just over here. Thank you. Oh, it's coming from the other side. Oh, there we go.
When you drew the drawing of the car, the AI expanded on your parameters.
Correct.
And gave you different views of it. Is it capable of breaking out of the box, say the way Frank Gehry deconstructed a building that was normally just a box?
Yeah. So I love that question. So the AI by itself in its original version was not possible. Was not capable of doing that. It stayed within the realm of traditionally what people would do. Where we're going now is yes, it absolutely can. So we developed algorithms years ago, a whole field called generative design, which is basically using computational methods to explore how things could be varied. It's not actually machine learning in the traditional sense that it's learned, from data. What it's actually using is the equations of physics, for example, or it's using certain fundamental concepts to fully explore that. And what we discovered is one of the best uses of this technology was to de-bias designers. Because when designers are designing things, the solution space is massive. Biasing, I mean, we always think of the word bias as a bad thing. Bias is your human shortcut. Because we don't have enough energy in our body to imagine 1,000 solutions to something. So we immediately believe that those two things are probably the right thing. So just to be able to not even do the whole design for you, but just to show you some other options to inspire you. So yes, that is 100% where this is going.
Yeah, fascinating. Let's take just over here. Sorry, the gentleman in the third row. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned about how quickly this is progressing and moving. And so for governments, by the time the ink dries, it's gone. And this is to all of you, do you think that state legislatures and local governments should be trying to govern or regulate? And if so, how would you, since it moves so quickly, what would be your advice since you're in that space developing it? How should they go about doing so to ensure that the communities are kept safe?
Just a clarifying question. You mean states versus the federal government in the United
Yeah,
States?
like individual states.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to go first?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think I have the expertise to fully answer your question, but what I hope the type of regulation or that we implement is based on some kind of scientific research, right? Like when there's certain harm, like, I was an expert on a case where a boy commits suicide after talking to a chatbot, right? And, a lot of people are talking to the chatbot. I think a lot of people are asking, like, well, why is it happening to this person? So that's why you need to study, the other impact, the other factors surrounding that case, and be able to sort of understand scientifically what is the mechanism of that harm. So I hope that when we have regulation, it will be based on this sort of scientific finding that have nuances, so that we have like smart regulation, not a regulation that ban everything or adopt everything.
What I would add to that as well is the biggest problem I'm seeing right now is alignment across the different states and the local legislators. Everybody thinks that they're the one that's doing the right thing, and none of them are talking to each other. So I can tell you, I'm sure it's true of Google, it's certainly true of Autodesk. We're worried right now, because we're going like, if we have to comply to 95 different bits of regulation that were all developed completely independently, that have emphasized completely different things, we don't even know how to do that. I mean, it's even they're even contradictory in a number of places. So I think we're doing a lot of wheel spinning right now, where there's a lot of things happening in different corners, where I would love to see, first I'd love to see it more done at the federal level, but also a lot more alignment across these things.
Vivian actually led an extraordinary conversation at 11 this morning on AI and regulation. And so the snapshot, for those of you who weren't there, one of my takeaways was, who is the we that's supposed to be doing all of this AI and governance? We haven't really even decided like who should be in the room for that conversation. And in places like the EU and China, it's like the government acted, the government took some swift actions and made some decisions, and companies aren't super happy about them. And I think in the States, we're taking this pause. We're having a federally instituted pause on some of our regulation. And one of the silver linings of that might be that we can step back and say, what does the public want? How do we include public voice? And maybe we're not all AI experts. Maybe we don't have to be. But can we be part of deliberations and dialogues where we actually get to help define the principles, at least, that govern these technologies?
Yeah, and just to add one bit of detail to what Beth was just talking about, I don't know, what time is it? Currently in the bill that's on the Senate floor, I have no idea at 3:21 Mountain Time whether it's still in or not, but there is a 10-year hold, that's longer than a pause, a flat-out hold and ban in this bill for states to do their own AI legislation. And the theory for those who support it is saying this is going to force the federal government to take action. There is obviously those who are opposed to it think, what happened to states' right? Anyway, it's complicated. This is a whole other session. But it's a very important moment right now. Okay, let's take another question. Just over here, this gentleman right here. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll take you. No, it's okay. We'll take you, and then because I called on you, you go next.
I'm Jerron, founder and CEO of ColorStack. We support Black and Latino computer science students, so helping them all get into careers like this. Mike, right?
Yes.
So you're looking at the application layer, of course. I mean, all of you are, but looking at the application layer of a lot of these frontier models. So my question is like, what the limits are in terms of infrastructure, like what are the bottlenecks right now, in terms of like achieving your wildest dreams of like all these projects that you guys are working on? And then what are the limits architecturally of models where no matter how much energy NVIDIA GPUs we have, we just won't be able to do certain things?
Yeah. So when you say infrastructure, just to be clear, you're talking about hardware infrastructure,
hardware,
the chips and
electricity, like all the...
Yeah. So I will say with the kind of work that we do, so there's not that many labs in the world that are working in sort of geometries, building structures. That, I mean, there are a few, but it's certainly not at the level of like the large language models, the vision language models that we see at the frontier stuff that you mentioned. So we are actually nowhere near the compute capacity that even like these folks were doing maybe even a few years ago. To be honest, the things I've showed you here were done with models that are already a year old. They're far better than that already, and they're still not really at that point that they're using enormous amounts. Now, they are using it, and what we are seeing, so when we started this effort, we set up our AI lab about 9 years ago. When we started it because nobody was working in these fields in AI. Everybody was working on language models and processing Twitter feeds and doing that kind of thing. So we decided to start doing this work because we wanted to know whether these models were going to do what you just asked. Are they going to continue scaling? As we put more building information or product designs or animations into this, is it going to learn? All indications are 100% it is. It learns, in fact, it learns incredibly well because the real world is full of all of these interesting correlations that you get between structures and form and vision and all of these things. It's not one-dimensional language. So yes, it can continue growing. Where's it going to stop? And that's I literally don't know. I think none of us know, actually, even on the frontier models. The one bright thing that I do like, and somebody mentioned it in an earlier talk today, these models are being used right now to design data centers, which I think is fabulous. So the kind of stuff that I showed you that place in Oakland, this thing's becoming circular. And again, like Vivian said, I don't consider myself a tech utopian, that just the technology is going to solve everything. But boy, if we can find a way to use this technology straight away to start optimizing the carbon in that data center and optimize the cooling, hey, yeah, let's do it. So those are the kind of things that I'm feeling really good about, that we can use that now.
Great. Did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Zach. I write plays. This is a question for kind of Google and SenseMaker, but maybe it's for everybody. And apologies in advance, I'm going to do like a couple of like givens before I ask the question. But given big tech's kind of penchant for forced adoption of AI, I'm thinking like Gemini and search and things like that. Also, given the fact that 1 in 8 households in America don't have access to internet, and then finally, given that local governments, let's call it myopia for public-private partnerships. Are you worried about that kind of like potential disenfranchisement for local governments' adoptions of things like SenseMaker? And if so, what are you thinking about with regards to that?
No.
Wonderful question. Yeah, I agree with all of your givens, first of all. I'll start by saying one of the sort of the raison d'etre for Jigsaw to exist at all back in 2009 was internet access. And it is getting at so much of the inequities that you're describing. Our very first suite of tools is for folks in repressive regimes, think China, Russia, Iran, those are our primary users, to actually access the internet and be able to do what they will and express themselves on it. So fully with you, and I think there's a huge last mile problem that our team isn't equipped to solve, but I think lots of other great folks, especially philanthropists here, are working on extending internet access. So with you on that one. But in terms of how do we scale this to other cities so that it's not just sort of the San Franciscos and the Bowling Greens who got selected here to use AI, I think there is sort of a user education issue that's happening with AI. Some of it is the forced adoption is forcing some of us to become acquainted with it. But we need to actually have mayors talking to other mayors, state governments talking to other state governments. I was at a fantastic event last week in Princeton where 25 different state AI officers came together. Did you know that's a role? You can be a state AI officer now. But they were coming together and they were exchanging best practices and tips. And the week before that, we had brought Doug Gorman from Bowling Green to California to talk to a whole bunch of mayors. And I think that's exactly the type of knowledge sharing and sort of upskilling that we need to have from practitioner to practitioner about how this can work. And then the resources need to follow that, of course.
Great. We probably have time for 2 more questions. So anybody on this side? Just here in the front, right here. Thank you.
So my name is Ginny, and my question is so low level.
All good.
So I'm thinking of retirement, and I'm thinking about my future self, and I know a number of people I know are using ChatGPT to try to figure out their future self. Do you have a suggested tool for that type of
That's for Pat.
exploration?
Yeah, well, you can use our tool. That's for one. But I think for us, we designed for maybe like younger audience who haven't had a live experience yet. But I think, generative AI tool like ChatGPT, Claude, and all of these, I think are good at helping, people getting different perspective. I think the thing that you need to be critical about is sometimes the answer that this model give can be somewhat biased, right? It might overgeneralize the population or try to make such suggestion that may be not applicable or personalized to you. So I think you need to sort of take that with that consideration. Yeah.
Great. And one more question right here, and then we're going to wrap.
Thank you. Otilia Cioro. Very simple question. How can we make the chatbots have polite conversation? And what do I mean by this? Because I was very interested in the result of the research that Pat showed with the impact of AI on human behavior. What I'm noticing is that the people who are talking a lot with the chatbots, they forget how to have a polite conversation because they can control the conversation. It's normal.
Right.
I only want to talk about this topic, and I only want these answers. And then spending too much time in that environment make it maybe difficult to interact normally. So long story short, how can we make, when we are having a conversation with let's say ChatGPT, if we are not polite, can ChatGPT tell you, hey, this is not good for you, let's have a...
Yeah.
And should it?
I love this question.
It should, right? I mean, I think that's the kind of behavior we hope the model would do. But because right now we don't have the metrics on, any of that, whether the model answer it appropriately or not, or have the right behavior that helping people form the appropriate behavior or not, right? I think a lot of people are worrying that, it's not that these machines are becoming, similar to human, but actually human that are becoming similar to the machine. That we start to
we're switching.
we're switching, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the dangerous part.
And the models are becoming so sycophantic. A bunch of you might have seen the recent work by Anthropic saying, hey, these models are, the people are choosing the models that are nicer and nicer to them. And meanwhile, the people are becoming meaner and meaner to the models. I think it's a fantastic point. One really cutting edge lab doing work on this is at Northwestern. A guy named Matt Groh is studying, can we have the AI actually coach us on empathy? After we've de-skilled ourselves and unlearned all the empathy we had, can they actually coach us on that? And there's some really promising literature on AI coaches.
That's great. Anything you wanted to add there?
No, that's great.
Okay, great. All right, well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you.
That was awesome.
Awesome.